Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. So today is the very last day before the season refreshes, before we get a brand new card to kind of shake up the meta a little bit. We will have a new season pass that we're able to dive into to unlock a card. Now, we did think a patch was coming within the next couple of days, but we did hear from Ben today that the patch has been delayed a couple of weeks because of a critical error that they found just before pushing it to production. We are going to go into next season with the same kind of deck builds and meta that we had all of last season. But hopefully the new card will be able to kind of shake it up and create some new archetypes or counter archetypes to those strong deck lists. But for today's list, we are going with a control style deck. It has been a while since I have done a lockdown style deck where the key win condition is making sure that your opponents can't play on that final turn, or if they can, it's in a lane that it doesn't matter that they push resources into. And so the three key lockdown cards in this deck list are going to be Storm, Spider-Man, and Professor X. Each of these will be able to lock down a lane at least for one turn to be able to give us a strategic advantage in playing the cards where we need to and when we need to. And then the rest of the deck list is kind of designed to either push early power and squeeze out some extra power outside of a normal play line. And so running through the deck list really quickly. First up, we have Sunspot. Sunspot is going to be phenomenal in a lockdown location. If you drop Sunspot and then end up locking it down with a Professor X, Sunspot is then protected from Killmongers, from Electras, from any form of destruction, and he's able to grow over time. So if maybe you got outplayed and you were 3 power short from winning that lane, you know that all you have to do is not use 3 energy by the end of the game to at least bring that up into a tie, skip and not use 4 to come up over and win that lane. We have Iceman as a form of early disruption and a way to just push out some early power. He's going to be a good trigger for Angela and just to have some power and presence on the board. And then we have Angela. So with this deck list and with locking down locations, our lockdown cards come in at a pretty high energy cost for their power ratio. So the only way we're going to be able to overcome that deficit and win either a secondary lane or ensure that the lane that we lock down is a win is with some early game power. And Angela is perfect with that. We can drop her on 2, we can follow that up on 3 with maybe a Storm, and then we do a Juggernaut on 4. That's going to buff Angela up further. It's going to make it really hard for them to compete for that stormed location. And then even if we just drop her in a lane, we can follow up with a Sunspot, an Iceman, an Ironheart to push a lot of power for a relatively cheap energy cost. We have Lady Sif. So we are finally bringing back the Lady Sif Ghost Rider combo. This is something that we ran right after getting into Pool 3 because Ghost Rider was one of our first Pool 3 cards. At the time, he was 3 energy. He's since been balanced up to 4 energy, but even at 4 energy, you're still able to drop the entire combo in one turn. You can really sneak some power out onto the board when your opponent's not expecting it. And so Lady Sif is going to discard our highest cost card. And in this deck list, that is designed so that it will always be Odin if we have drawn into him. That way we can do the double trigger and actually cap out a location by playing Lady Sif Ghost Rider in the same lane on the same turn, which will discard Odin. It'll resummon Odin, which will then discard another high cost card that we have, which is just a little bit of power. We don't have any huge power pushes in the 5 or 4 cost slot, but it is sometimes going to be just enough to push us over that barrier so that we are able to lock down and win that location. Then we have Ironheart. If we lock down a lane with a Storm, with a Professor X, but we're just not quite able to reach that power level, Ironheart is going to be able to come in and push a little bit of additional power into those lanes. And then if we drop Ironheart early, we then lock down another lane on 5 with a Professor X. We can always come back in with an Odin to re-trigger Ironheart's ability and push more power into those lanes. And then we have Storm. Storm is a great card for your lockdown or control style deck builds. She is going to change that location into a flooded lane where the next turn is the last turn that cards can be played there. This is going to flow very, very well into our Juggernaut. Juggernaut is going to on reveal push the cards that were played there in that lane that turn out of that lane from your opponent. And so following up a Storm with a Juggernaut is a huge win condition, or following up a Storm with a Juggernaut and a Sunspot pushes so much power. And then even if you do get outplayed somehow, Sunspot can grow over time and you are able to capitalize and utilize on that Sunspot and that lane to snowball into making sure you win one of the other locations. And then we have Spider-Man. I almost never drop Spider-Man on turn 4. even though he is a 4-cost card, for me, he's a lot more strategic to use on turn 5. If we have a lane locked down with Storm, and then maybe one of the other locations were locked down, maybe it was Sanctum Sanctorum where you can't play cards directly there. If we drop Spider-Man on 5, the opponent is not going to be able to do their big late game power push on that final turn. So if they were planning on doing a Doctor Doom to push power wide, that takes that off the table. It lets us really assess what our power level and power potential is going to be. And then we have Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider is here primarily as a way to sneak additional power onto the board, but with the Lady Sif Ghost Rider combo, if we don't have Odin, we can always use it as a way to sneak a Professor X out onto the board an extra turn early, and with an additional 3 power to go along with it. It makes it a little bit easier for us to guarantee that we lock down that lane that we drop it in. And then we have Rescue. Rescue on reveal, if you play a card here next turn, is +5. Now, out of the entire list, this card probably feels the most out of place. The idea is if we didn't have any other great playline up to this point, and we have a Professor X, we could do a Rescue and then a Professor X. We can do a Rescue and then drop an Iceman while turning one of the other locations with like a Storm. But overall, it feels kind of lackluster. So if I was going to sub out a card, it would probably be Rescue, maybe for another 5-cost card, for that Lady Sif Ghost Rider, discard maybe an Iron Man, which would really elevate that lane. You could almost guarantee that you lock down a Lady Sif Ghost Rider, Odin, Iron Man lane, as long as they don't have a huge power push there prior to that. It just doesn't feel like it's going to be that winning card or that game-changing, game-breaking card. So I think it's probably the first up on the chopping block if you wanted to try to sub cards out. And then we have Professor X. He is going to lock down one of our locations. He's going to help us control and lock down the board. After Professor X is played, no cards can be added, changed, moved out of that lane, destroyed, but they can be buffed up. And so that is where Sunspot, if we have Sunspot in a Professor X lane and we need to pass on 6, we can to gain that additional power so that we can come up over and win. And then finally we have Odin. Odin has a few decent targets in this deck list, either with Ironheart or primarily with the Lady Sif Ghost Rider combo package, so that we can fill up an entire lane on the final turn to push something like 18 power into that lane and onto the opponent. So if we've won a location with a Professor X or a Storm and all of a sudden we fill up 18 power where they thought we were probably only going to push 9, 11, maybe even 12 with a Magneto, we can push about 18 with this combo piece. And it's pretty surprising because you don't see Lady Sif Ghost Rider ran as often as it used to be. And so that is the breakdown of the deck list. I am going to go ahead and jump to a few games for the last video before the new season. I hope you guys enjoy, and make sure you stick around tomorrow for our coverage of whatever brand new card comes out. All right, next up we have the letter Z. In our starting hand, we do have our Sunspot, so he's going to be able to kind of buff up over time. So if we put him in a lane that gets locked down through either Storm or Professor X, then that is perfect for us. And so we do have an Angela. We have an Iceman that can actually double trigger here, which I'm wondering if that may not be better than dropping Angela. I'm going to go ahead and go with the disruption from Iceman. I think the double trigger is gonna be pretty big, and we won't always be able to see it, but I think the impact is definitely gonna be there. And so then the last location is Shadowland, which isn't great, but we can do something like a double Ironheart. This is going to be a really weird game. We may not even hit any of our lockdown components. We may just go off of some of the like medium to decently powered on reveal cards. And so we get the double trigger of Ironheart here, which then buffs up our negative ninja into a positive ninja. I think maybe we can go with an Angela into Shadowland. That way, if Sunspot does move this over, that's fine. Or it gives us a easier chance to drop a Professor X here to try to lock down this one, and then we can always re-trigger our on reveals with Odin on the last turn. And so let's go ahead and go with the Angela. Ooh, their double Jubilee could pull into some big cards here. Okay, so Lady Sif, not great, and then it destroys Odin, and so then Storm. Okay, so actually the Lady Sif into Kamar Taj was kind of rough for them. It discarded 2 cards, so now when they resummon with Ghost Rider, they might resummon what they need, but they also might not. Ooh, so here I actually think, so maybe not. I was going to be kind of excited because we could do Professor X into Shadowland, but they are going to be able to see what we play. And so then they could just come up over it with, actually they'd have to come up over it with an 8-cost card, right? And so I think maybe we do this. And then that will make, in Strange Academy, our Sunspot move over into the flooded lane. That will guarantee where he goes, instead of having the question of maybe it goes here, maybe it doesn't. And so I think we're going to do that. That's going to be hard for them to compete. We're already ahead by 3. This will be 6, and then 2 more is going to be an 8-point lead in the lane with 5 energy. You can do it, but a lot of times, depending on what you're running, you may not have a 5-cost 8-power card in your deck. And something like a Hobgoblin could at least bring us even. But that's okay, because then we're locked in here. As long as we win one of the other lanes by more than they win theirs, then it's perfect. But at that point, Ghost Rider does have to become a concern. Okay, and so they do not contest Shadowland. Ooh, and so they lock down the flooded lane. We lock down Shadowland. Okay, so we are going to be able to get a 15 power play here on the last turn. So if they drop a Ghost Rider and it resummons their Infinite, then we can still come up over their power level. If they drop Ghost Rider and it resummons Odin into Ghost Rider, or Odin into the Infinite, then we end up losing. So this is Ghost Rider. Let's see if they get, I think they're going for the 50-50 here. And of course, we're not really going to have anything huge, but they are going for the split. So the Ghost Rider into the Infinite, which is not quite enough. Had they, it came down to a flip. Had Ghost Rider resummoned Odin instead of the Infinite, that one was a little bit too close for comfort. We didn't get all of our lockdown components as early as we would have liked, but we were able to hold it out anyways with the Angela, with the Sunspot, and then with the Kamar Taj double on reveals were pretty nice as well. But we were able to make do with what we had. All right, next up we have Graciela, probably the bot, but we don't know that for sure. We are going to play our Iceman on turn 1. Turn 2, the Red Skull from the hub actually disrupts our combo ability of the Lady Sif into the Ghost Rider to pull in our Professor X in a little bit more guaranteed way. So I think we're actually going to skip on 2, unfortunately. Okay, and then for 3, I think we just go with Ironheart here. That will buff up our Raptors and our Iceman, which is not ideal, but at least we get the buff out onto the board through that Ironheart. It's going to do us more good to push the power out onto the board rather than try to hold this. And so they have an Ironheart of their own. Ironheart is a very bot-friendly card. And then the last location is Hala here. So we can do Rescue into a Professor X. That way we'd have a pretty big power push. Or maybe we lock them down with Spider-Man here. That may accidentally lose us the card. We're going to go with Rescue in Savage Land. Next turn we will probably go with our Professor X in that lane for a decent power push. They did get a Wolfsbane, so if it is a bot, then maybe they play a card there just to hard counter us, but we do have the potential of an Odin on the last turn to push more power into the lane if we absolutely need to. And so they don't play into the Savage Land. We do go ahead and get the lockdown locked in, and they lock in 10 power into the hub, which is terrible. We're going to be able to easily overcome that, right? And so they snapped. Why so confident? So a blue Marvel would only put them at 16 and it'd put them at 14. So if we did something like Odin, that puts us at 12. We could always do Lady Sif Ghost Rider, which would discard our Odin and then bring back Red Skull, which I think is going to be a really competitive lane. That's going to be a huge power push from, and we're going to get to utilize the Red Skull that we didn't actually put into our deck list. And so they do go with a Mr. Fantastic. Okay, in the Sentinel. So it's not enough in the Savage Land. We're going to push out way too much power. They're not going to be able to compete with us in the Hollow Lane because we will get the guaranteed Odin, which is the only 6-cost card in our deck list for that reason. That way we can always get the double trigger on that last turn if we want to, for some really big, unexpected last turn swings. And so it was against the bot, but it does showcase the idea of the deck nonetheless. We are going to keep it in, and then we were going to go ahead and jump to the next one. All right, next up we have Carr. And the first thing you're going to notice is that between last game and this game, we spent quite a bit of time. We spent quite a bit of time upgrading all of our cards in this deck list to the legendary border. That way it's all consistent and it looks satisfying. We're not going to be able to do that for every deck list, but we did hit the credit cap after the second game. And so I decided to go ahead and drop the resources there. This location is Gamma Lab, which is not... Oh, okay. And so they liked seeing this location. So I think we go with Angela. Next turn, we will go with a Juggernaut to push their cards off. That way we get more Hulks than they do. I'm not sure what they liked about shuffling the cards into the deck after this turn, or after turn 3, that they were confident enough to snap in. And they have initiative, which is not great. But if they decided to destroy these for some reason, they'll have 2 cards in the lane. We'll still be able to push one of them out. And so that's decently okay. Let's go ahead and lock that in. I think they probably go Carnage. No, they go a Wave. Interesting. Okay. And so we are going to push their wave off. We get the same number of Juggernauts that they do. We are content with that. We will shuffle our cards into our deck and then draw 3 new ones after this turn, but they will do the same. So the wave seems kind of like a gamble for them. Ooh, that is not what you want to see in terms of drawing cards, right? So maybe we go Storm. Next turn, we will go one of the other lanes with a Spider-Man so that we can get a free drop on the last turn. Oh, and they draw back into their Professor X. Super fortunate. But we're going to be able to make sure that they can't play on that very final turn. So we're going to have a little bit of advantage in kind of reading that. And so I'm going to go ahead and play our Sunspot into the flooding location. We're going to lock them out of Xandar for that final turn. And then we'll see what we draw into to see what we're able to play and if we're able to be in a strategic position to win. That is not great. So they drop in Xandar instead of the flooded location. That is really not good. So we are at 0. We have to come up to 8 in this lane to be able to win. They're not going to be able to play here or here in this final turn. Ooh, that will do it. We will re-trigger Green Goblin, send it their way. We will re-trigger Spider-Man for just giggles. I would snap, but I think they will run away. I think they will retreat if we snap because they're not able to play in this turn. I'm just going to go ahead and lock in the Odin, see if they will stick it out for the 4 cubes. I'd rather get the extra cubes here. And so they do end up retreating. Them not having a chance to play their high power in-game combo is what this deck list is designed to do in locking down multiple locations between Professor X, Storm, or Spider-Man. And so we got decently lucky that they locked down this lane with a Professor X and that we drew into the resources to be able to lock down the other 2. All right, and so next up we have the letter Z again. I think they were our first opponent of the video. Either that or it was in a different deck list that I was testing out. But Kiln is actually like a mini Storm for us, which is nice. That is going to help us lock down this location. We are going to throw our Sunspot there. Maybe they do the same. Yeah, so they do the same with their Sunspot. So they're going to be able to get some upside there. Hell's Kitchen, we're going to draw into our Iceman, which is okay. I think we do go ahead and play Iceman into Kiln. Next turn, I think we drop our Storm somewhere. Maybe even drop Storm here. I don't know. Okay, and so they do Daredevil, so they will be able to see what we're going to play on turn 5. The Sanctum Sanctorum here makes Juggernaut kind of scary. I think we are going to still go with Storm here. That is going to make next turn our very last turn to play cards. So maybe we drop Storm. Next turn we could do probably our Ironheart, honestly, to buff up all of our cards. It's not going to be great. And then we're not going to be able to play after turn 4, so the winner is going to be decided after that point. That early in the game, it is going to be decided. So I'm going to go ahead and do our Ironheart here. That will give a 6 power push across the lanes because we need as much power kind of dispersed as we can. Rescue's only going to be 4. Juggernaut could potentially win them the game over in Sanctum Sanctorum, and then Spider-Man, since we're not going to be able to play after this turn anyways, is not going to be ideal. So they drop a Storm to re-trigger the flooded location. So we will be able to play cards for one more turn here. So it turns out that Rescue would have actually benefited us a little bit more than we thought it would. And so for turn 5, they are able to see what we can play, or what we are going to play. We can't play here anymore. Do we go with the Juggernaut to push whatever they play into a different lane? If it pushes it over into Sanctum Sanctorum, that's fine, we win. If it pushes it over here, that's fine, we win. Because right now we're winning in these 2 lanes. I think that's fine. I think we're okay with that. If it's a Hobgoblin, it'll push it into another lane so that maybe it'll go into Sanctum Sanctorum, and then we keep the lead there as well. This could be bad. We're going to go ahead and lock it in anyways. I want to see it play out. I think the only potential downside is if they play a card that is more power and we push it over into Kiln maybe, and we end up losing that one by a larger margin, but I don't think we're at any risk in the Sanctum Sanctorum location. So we do push it over into Kiln, which is unfortunate. And they pull into Jubilee, which pulls into their Chavez. Oh, okay. And so we know that we're going to have to skip here. Oh, man. That was so huge. That pull for them was so huge. Had we shot it over into Sanctum Sanctorum, we would have been fine. We would have won both left and mid, but since it went over into the kiln location, we're both going to have to pass this turn. They win the left lane by 6. We win mid by 5. So unfortunate. So very, very unfortunate here. The letter Z, very, very good game. It all came down to a coin flip. Actually, 2 coin flips, because had this not pulled into a Chavez, then maybe we had a chance as well. Had it even pulled into something like Professor X, we had a good enough lead. But that's the way the coin flips sometimes. Let's go ahead and retreat and reset. All right, next up we have Ghost Rider. I would love to be able to use Ghost Rider against Ghost Rider. I feel like that would be so satisfying. So we're going to go ahead and probably drop our Angela on turn 2. So right now, New York, on turn 6, you can move cards to this location. I don't really like the element of surprise, the element of RNG that brings. So I'm going to drop our Angela there. Next turn, so they drop Quake on us. Ghost Rider is running Quake, which moves New York to mid, unfortunately. And then Jotunheim is on the far right-hand side. So I am going to go ahead and do our Storm still. Next turn, I'll probably end up just dropping like a Sunspot, maybe a Sunspot Ironheart. Ooh, and so they're running Cerebro. Okay, so it's a Cerebro 3. And so knowing that early is kind of strange. It means they're not going to be able to really invest anything into Jotunheim until the very last turn, which is okay. And they're not going to be able to play an Onslaught here to amplify the Cerebro because we did lock it down with Storm. I think we go ahead and go all out. We cap this one out with a Sunspot and an Ironheart to really get the boost here. At this point, I'm confident. I'm confident enough that I would snap, but I don't want to make them run. I want to see if we can kind of play this one out a little bit further. And so we do the Ironheart, which hits all 3 of the cards here. Angela will buff. Ooh, and so they did have a Mystique, which is a pretty nice push for the 3 power cards. It brings them all the way up to 7, but we know that 7 is not going to be enough in this flooded location. Ooh, actually, they could move their cards over on turn 6, but I don't know that that's enough. Do we try to troll them a little bit? We can, whatever they drop this turn, I assume is going to be in New York. We can push it over into Jotunheim. That way it doesn't get the benefit of the Cerebro, the double Cerebro. Even if they move it back, it'll have been discounted by 1. And then next turn we can just do all of the cards here. We'll be able to do Lady Sif, Ghost Rider, which will discard our Odin, and then it'll also play whatever we draw into on turn 6. So, oh, really? Okay. I did not anticipate that. So are they changing the location? Yeah, okay. So they changed this location, which brings out Monster Island, which is terrible for them. It's also not great for us. Actually, that's okay for us. But like I said, it's terrible for them because then Cerebro and Mystique will hit the monster instead of their 3-cost cards, and so Scarlet Witch really stabbed them in the back. We didn't even get to use our Ghost Rider against Ghost Rider. Oh, right, we finally find a human opponent in Healthy Snacks. At least I believe they're human. Oh, we have been on a bot streak, and it has been very, very difficult to get non-bot related games this time around. I usually don't like to feature bot matchups, but in this scenario, we may have to do a couple. And so starting out, they do Squirrel Girl. So are they farming? If they're farming and they run away, I'm going to be so sad. Healthy Snacks, you're making me nervous. Please don't do that. I actually think we're going to do the Lady Sif early this game. Most of the time, I kind of like to wait to do it all in one turn, the Lady Sif Ghost Rider combo. But for this matchup, I do think we're going to be able to do have some upside in dropping a Ghost Rider on 4 to get the lockdown. Ooh, a Ghost Rider on 3? Maybe a Ghost Rider on 3 to get the lockdown. So we can actually lock down the cards in the Strange Academy. We're going to get 6 power here. Do we? Well, would we rather lock this one down? Maybe we resummon it in the sewer system and lock this one down. If they do a Carnage, that is going to be 2, 4, 6. It's going to be 5. We're going to have more power here, and that will lock in their negative if they don't destroy it this turn. Yeah, let's go ahead and lock this side. Ooh, so it's a good thing that we did not go into mid, right? They had a massive 9 power that we would have locked in and lost that lane because of. But we do lock in the sewer system, so that's good for us. I think we actually, ooh, yeah, this is going to be good. Let's go ahead and do a Juggernaut here. Actually, it won't really matter, will it? So what I'm looking at, and I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do it. After turn 5, all the cards here are going to move over into this location, as long as there's space. if after turn 5 we lock down their lane with a Spider-Man, once their cards move out, they won't be able to drop anything into Strange Academy on that last turn, giving us an easy way to lock it down. And so I don't know whether dropping a Juggernaut here is going to be more ideal, or if it really even matters. I honestly don't think it does. Might as well push a little power on the board. We could do a Storm, but that doesn't give us any other kind of strategic advantage. So they do a Bucky Barnes and a Nova, which we're going to push, oh my gosh, which we're going to push over into the Strange Academy to cap it out. Could we do something like an Angela and a Storm, which would be 3, 4, 5. This would end up being 13, 14, 15. I think this is the play. We change this location so that it no longer pushes or moves these cards out. They no longer have a chance to destroy their Nova or their Bucky Barnes, because we do know that they have already dropped the Killmonger. So we are going to go with the Angela, the Storm, which is not the path I was thinking. But it is kind of fortuitous that they dropped 2 cards into Tinker's Workshop and we pushed them over. So I think it's one of those games where it's multiple paths to the ultimate destination. So let's go ahead and lock this one down. The cards are not going to move out of the lane. They do a wave, so I mean it really doesn't matter what they play here. We can only drop 1 card. They can probably drop 2 in like a death and something else, but we have the Odin here, which will be able to overcome the flooded lane unless they have a way to buff those cards up, which is really weird in a death wave style deck. Then we should be able to lock in the win here with our 8 power Odin to come in and buff up our Angela further. And if they extend the game, then we also re-trigger Storm here, so we can drop more resources if needed for some reason. Overall, the control aspect of the list really kicked in. It worked well for us here in limiting what they're able to play, so that we can strategically position our power to make sure that we're in a position to win. But that is game number 6. We are going to go ahead and end the video here. This is the last video before the brand new card release tomorrow, which we are going to be covering as soon as it comes out. We're going to try and get that video out and uploaded about 3 hours earlier than our normal schedule, just as soon as we can get a good deck list that feels good enough to feature, get some games with it, and then get the editing done. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like and a comment down below. I appreciate any and all feedback that you guys give, even if I don't get to respond to every single comment. And once again, thank you guys for coming back and checking out the content. This has been TLSG. Later, guys.